In this mixing with Mike tip, I'm going to explain downward compression and how that works. So if I go here to my Pro Tools session, I just opened up a simple Dynamics processor here, and it has all the basic settings that we're looking for, and I have this set up on a snare drum. Now, essentially what we have is the primary function is the threshold, which you can see here in the orange arrow, and this is shown also here in the orange knob that's over here to the right. So they work in conjunction with each other, and you see that moving on the display. When the audio signal passes above this threshold, then compression is activated. And what happens is there is a delay which is induced before the compression starts to happen, and that's done with the attack time. So if you delay the attack by 10 milliseconds, then the transient peak generally will pop through, in this case, particularly with the snare drum, and then the compression will be activated. So it won't be pulling down or attenuating the peak unless the attack is set to be very fast. The amount of compression is determined by the ratio, and how that ratio or how that's applied when the signal exceeds threshold is determined by the knee. So when I adjust the knee, you'll notice that it kind of curves or flattens out this area around the threshold. And the basic idea there is with a fast knee, or what's called a hard knee, the ratio is activated instantaneously. So as soon as the signal is above threshold, then you have compression at a 3-to-1 ratio. If, however, I slow down the knee, what happens is it sort of crossfades the ratio in. So what this means is that the compression becomes a bit more transparent or softer. It doesn't kick in as hard. So a soft compression, and the numbers are represented in different ways. Here they represent it in a dB value, and in many they just have simple numbers, 1 through 10 or something like that, for hard knee to soft knee. So for a hard knee, you're going to get more aggressive compression that you will hear. For a softer knee, then it's going to smooth out the application or the entrance of compression, the start of the compression. So this has nothing to do with the release of the compression, just the start of it. Once the signal falls back below threshold, then the release circuit is kicked in, and the release circuit will determine how long before the signal goes back to uncompressed signal. So the basic parameters then are the threshold, which starts activates the compression, the attack time, which determines how long it takes for the compression to be activated, the ratio, which determines by how much, the knee determines how quickly that ratio is applied, and the release time determines how quickly it will return back to non-compressed signal. So if we just have a quick audio example here, you'll see a snare drum here with a 3-to-1 ratio. And let's see if we can get this. So we have settings here. Let's start with a fast attack, and we can start to see some gain reduction here. As I increase the ratio, we can see that there's an increase, or somewhat of an increase. Now, many compressors, particularly in the digital realm, they will actually assume that if you want, say, like a very aggressive kind of limiting here, that you don't want an exceedingly heavy amount of gain reduction. And depending upon how far above threshold the signal is will determine how much that 100-to-1 ratio is. So in other words, if it's only like a dB above threshold, then having a 100-to-1 ratio is not a whole lot different from a 50-to-1 ratio, even though it's technically about the same. The amount of gain reduction in the meter is not going to show up a whole lot differently. So it's how much the signal exceeds, right, the threshold that determines the amount of gain reduction along with the ratio setting. And then we can soften this right here, and that'll smooth out the sound of the compression that's activated with the knee. The release time just determines how quickly the signal gets sent back, right? So you may see a little less gain reduction sometimes, or it'll just happen more rapidly. Now, if I slow down my attack here, and that's in microseconds here. So you can see here like a medium release or attack time is in the teens as opposed to, a medium release time, which would be more in the hundreds, right? So the attack is more specific to grabbing the transient for a fast attack or allowing the transient to pop through and then compressing the remainder of the audio signal. The makeup gain is just applied here. So if I apply this here, I basically average out the amount of gain reduction that I'm getting here. So if it was about 3 dB, then more or less somewhere in that range, on average, I would add about 3 dB of makeup gain. The idea of the compression is that the trick is that it always sounds better when the output is louder than the input, and to some degree that should be what happens. In other words, you're bringing down the audio, whatever your compression, you're bringing that down so you can bring the overall level up higher. And what that'll do is it'll help to bring out some more of the presence. So you can hear that right here. All right, so there's a pickup. You can hear more of the background noise, which we could gate out. Right, and that's the basic idea. So that's applying with a very fast attack. That's 10 microseconds, so not 10 milliseconds. So that's like millionths of a second. So that's very, very fast attack time. Okay, so there you have it. There's a basic explanation of downward compression. So I hope you enjoyed this Mixing with Mike tip. If you like this tip, you can see many others by going to mpginsider.com, and you can join the live Mixing with Mike classes that happen every Wednesday at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Go to mpginsider.com for information and details. Sign up for the newsletter, and you will get free workshops and access to tons of music production and engineering videos, as well as access to the live classes. Thanks for tuning in.